Hello and welcome to the Odds On Favorites podcast, where we're talking sports entertainment all with an eye on the bottom line. I'm Drew Goldfarb, joined by Rick Rockwell and Taylor Smith. Let's jump right in with news and notes. We're taking a closer look at the biggest news of the week. We said we were going to open with this on last week's podcast. Taylor was very adamant that his Houston Rockets were going to win Game 6 in blowout fashion, and then Game 7 possibly in a blowout against Golden State to advance to the Western Conference Finals. Taylor, it's early in the show for our segment, whoops, but we'll just go ahead.
I mean, I know Rick came hard with a cycling take in his final word. I had to kind of go all in to try and top him. It seemed logical at the time. You know, the Rockets were healthy. Chris Paul had not shattered into 1,000 pieces yet. Kevin Durant was out Game 6 at home. I'm thinking, okay, they'll win that game because I had felt the series would go 7 the whole time, and it just seemed reasonable. They were undefeated at home in the playoffs, and then, you know, Steph Curry didn't even score a point in the first half, but the Warriors were still close, and then he took over down the stretch, and, you know, they did what they do, and the Rockets did what they do, and I'm left here with egg on my face. So that's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, that was I understand one thing he was going to go 7 too, but especially when they lost Kevin Durant late in that series. So just didn't work out on that one. I mean, at least it wasn't a buzzer beater finish like the Eastern Conference series that went 7 with Toronto and Philadelphia, because 4 bounces, that had to be heartbreaking for everybody in the state of Pennsylvania. So.
I lived through that Damian Lillard game winner against the Rockets, 4 or 5 years ago when he ended the series from like 30 feet. So I know the feeling. It's similar.
All right, well, let's stick with the NBA. We're sitting here recording this, and Golden State leads Portland 1-0 in the Western Conference Finals. Milwaukee leads Toronto 1-0 as well in the Eastern Conference Finals. We'll get into the individual games in just a second, but my question right now is, will either of the teams currently trailing in their series come back to win, or are we destined for that 1 seed versus 1 seed NBA Finals matchup? Rick, start with you.
Hey, I picked Portland to go to the Western Conference Finals. They made it. Job well done, but the series is over. There were no match in Game 1. They might pick off a game or two because Golden State gets lazy or complacent at times. But Golden State proved that they still are the best team in the league. Heart of a champion. They're the Warriors for a reason, in more ways than one. And Curry is back. Klay Thompson's looked good. They played solid team basketball. They eliminated the biggest threat remaining in all of our opinions. There is no way Portland comes back to win this series. I still think Toronto has a chance to come back because they have arguably the best two-way player in the game right now, other than maybe Durant or LeBron or somebody of that nature. So with that said, goodbye, Portland. It was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, we were kind of waiting for Enes Kanter to be exposed. He was playable against the Nuggets because they run a pretty big lineup, but, you know, he can't defend mobile guards, and Golden State happens to have mobile guards, and we saw that get exposed in Game 1. I could see Portland winning a game or two just at home. They have a good home crowd. Golden State has been more vulnerable on the road, you know, for the most part. But I don't see Portland winning the series. Toronto was winning pretty much the entire game on Wednesday night before a late fourth quarter surge from the Bucks kind of put them over the top. I'm not super bullish on the Raptors' chances of winning the series as a whole, but of the two teams down 0-1, they obviously have the best chance. They have the better roster than Portland. They just have the star, like Rick was saying, Kawhi Leonard. As long as he can find his footing, Toronto will always have a chance. So I wouldn't count them out. I wouldn't be totally panicking down 0-1, but losing that winnable Game 1 on the road is pretty devastating, I would think.
I do agree that the Raptors have the better shot of the two that are down 1-0 right now, but I don't think it really has anything to do with the rosters themselves so much as the teams they're going up against. Golden State is just the Golden State Warriors, so as good as Milwaukee has been this year, they still haven't won 3 of the last 4 NBA titles. So, and especially when Kevin Durant gets healthy, whether that's Game 3, 4, 5, whatever, that's, that's just adding another hugely talented player on there for Golden State. So I do agree. I think Portland's done. I think that they were done before they started the series. That's just the way that it's going to go. I agree. They may win one at home, maybe. I would say two, but like that would require them either sweeping 3 and 4 and in theory just evening up the series, assuming Golden State wins their first two. But, because if they win game 6, then it goes 7. So that's the only other home game. So I would say probably one win at home. I think that it's more likely that the series is over in 5. It could take 6, but that's kind of what I would think. Toronto's end of things, I looked at that, and it is a situation there. I think we're getting into that game a bit more in just a minute, but where there was a natural energy that Toronto got from beating Philadelphia the way they did in Game 7. And that was what happened from whatever it was, 4 minutes into the first until 3 minutes or so into the fourth. That was that energy boost. And that went away. And Milwaukee basically, over the course of from the high to the end, from Toronto, from their peak, it was a 21-point swing. Biggest lead for the Raptors, I believe, was 13, and they lost by 8. And that 21-point swing was when that energy, that carryover from Game 7 against Philly, wore off. And I don't think they're going to get another one of those boosts until they play at home in Game 3. But we're going to get into that in a minute. So I do think that both are done, but I thought that I figured as soon as we knew that we were getting Golden State against Portland and Milwaukee against Toronto, I figured the series was over at that point anyway. So, but we will get more into the Eastern Conference Finals in just a minute. But right now, it's Rick's favorite time of the show, the PGA Championship Tournament, teeing off as we're having this recording. Tiger Woods, of course, is the reigning Masters champion, while Brooks Koepka is the reigning PGA Championship winner and the favorite to win this weekend as a repeat winner back-to-back, posting at plus 1,000 ahead of the opening round. Taylor, who do you see picking up the win in the second major tournament of 2019?
So in our PGA video earlier this week, I actually picked Brooks Koepka, the favorite at plus 1,000. He just seems like a guy that contends at every major. He's already won 2. He finished second at the Masters a month ago. And not to toot my own horn, but as we speak, he's currently leading 6 under par as of this recording. 3 strokes ahead of second place, tooting in progress. So I picked Koepka. I think he's a viable favorite. Tiger Woods is always alluring, but I feel like his odds are always a bit, less profitable than they should be just because people want to flock to bet on Tiger Woods. Obviously, it paid off last time, but obviously more often than not, he's not going to win. The course doesn't really suit his game as well as Augusta, Bethpage Black. So I picked Koepka. It's looking good as of now. We'll see how this works out, but I'm feeling pretty good right now. Fast forward to next week's whoops.
Rick, any thoughts you want to provide here? I know
I've got some in-depth analysis here. I mean, you're a bet the field. Can I take the field on this one? Anybody but Tiger? Anybody? Do I have to go with anybody?
I mean, I don't think you could sell short necessarily on Woods, but I'm sure there.
Do I have to pick somebody?
I tell you what. Here, I'll pose this to you then. So I would agree on Koepka even before knowing what his score today was.
Yeah. I got a poster of what's his face, Koepka. I got a poster of him on the wall.
That's
my favorite golfer.
Yeah, I've seen it. So I guess the question I'll pose to you is: Tiger Woods' finish. Do you expect top 5, top 10, or outside of will he be in contention on the final day?
I think he can crack the top 10. I think he'll carry some momentum with him. I hope he finishes in the bottom 10. That's just me, though.
Misses the cut?
Yeah, I hope he misses the cut. I hope he breaks his leg, loses a hand to an alligator. That's just me. But if I had to say, I think he can crack the top 10. But I'm with, what's his name, Koepka, all the way.
Taylor, do you think that Woods cracks the top 10? Where do you think – is he in contention on the last day?
I don't think he'll finish in the top 10. It's a pretty deep field. Obviously, majors have less overall competitors, so the chances are greater that he will be in the mix. But I'd bet on him missing. It just seems like there's better value on that, especially since his odds are always bet down. So I'm not really bullish on Tiger this week at all.
Yeah, I also think it's one of those things where if he's truly in contention on Sunday, it's Tiger Woods coming off of a major win, and that would kind of lend itself towards picking him at least as a potential winner. So, yeah, I kind of steer away. I could see him in the top 15, and who knows? We could all, Taylor and I could end up with the golf whoops next week, and then you're leaning back on like, told you he could be top 10.
But I never doubted that guy.
I know Rick likes this a bit more, so let's talk a little NASCAR, shall we? Saturday night, the Monster Energy Open and the Monster Energy NASCAR All-Star Race. Focusing on the All-Star Race, Kyle Busch the favorite to win at plus 450, followed by Brad Keselowski and Kevin Harvick, each at plus 600. Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, each at plus 700. Rick, our resident racing expert, let's go to you first. Who you got in the All-Star Race?
Anybody but Tiger Woods? No? Okay.
I mean, that seems like an obvious bet.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 7 previous All-Star Race winners that will be lining up at the starting line to race this race on Saturday night. You've got Jimmy Johnson, who's got 8 career wins at this track and 4 career All-Star wins. He actually holds the record for the most All-Star wins. Kevin Harvick's won. Busch has won. Logano, Hamlin, on down the line. Even Ryan Newman, who's always like my weekly long shot pick, just because he's a former winner at a lot of these tracks. But this week, here's the problem. I've told you guys over the last week or so that I cannot go with Kevin Harvick anymore. He won last year, and people, what's funny, without getting too far off tangent, some people still think he's going to win this year's championship. Okay? I don't know what they're thinking. They're smoking crack or something. With that said, he's out of the picture. Okay? I'm not even looking at him. So for me, it comes down to Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Hamlin, and Keselowski. Every time I try and write Keselowski off, he comes back like the next week, either wins or has a really strong showing. Okay? Kyle Busch is the obvious pick here because he's like, first of all, he's the best driver right now in NASCAR, in anything. Xfinity, truck racing, or Monster Energy. He's the man. He's a complete package. And the older generation, like my father, hate him because he used to be such a punk to the old school people. That's why I like him, and I love his nickname, Rowdy. With that said, I'm leaning towards Logano or Denny Hamlin here, and here's why. Both of them are racing really well this year. I like their odds. I think Hamlin offers great betting value, and he's actually one of my betting value picks for this race. Logano is a former winner. Logano's won multiple races at Charlotte, and that's why I'm leaning towards Logano to win this over Hamlin. Hamlin has not won at Charlotte in the regular season. He's won an all-star race, but not in the regular season. Logano has. I think Logano is just more consistent. Sometimes Hamlin in these big races is hit or miss, even though he's having a much better year this year. I'm taking Logano. I think he's got what it takes to win the $1 million on Saturday. And hopefully, we have a good, entertaining race. I'm fired up for it.
We'll echo Rick's sentiment. Seems like you pick Joey Logano a lot. Is he like one of the better bets every week, or is he just a guy you have kind of a soft spot for?
He's the reigning NASCAR champ. He's constantly in the top 5. He's a silent assassin that I call him every single week. And we've gone to a few tracks where he's actually raced well, better than some of the other favorites. He's a good pick. Truex Jr. is a good pick. Also, I didn't mention him, but he is awesome at the 1.5 mile track, which is what Charlotte is. But since I can only pick one, I got to lean towards Logano here.
I can tell you that the racer I'm hoping wins is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And the only reason for that is because I had seen in an article online that he has said that if he wins the All-Star race, he's going to grow back the mullet that he had at one point. And, as a hockey fan and a fan of hockey mullets, that's right, I have to pull for it. If there's going to be a mullet on the line, I'm pulling for mullet over no mullet.
Okay.
That's the way I'm going to go. So that I think he's a a little bit deeper on the betting board there, but if it takes him winning $1 million to decide to go back to having the mullet,
$1 million mullet.
$1 million mullet. I mean, that just like screams hashtag. That's the perfect.
I only can grow a mullet.
We got to get
That
you
should
like
be a bet.
you need like the Joe Dirt wig.
Oh my God!
It's it's a version of a mullet. So
who's Taylor got? Who you got, Taylor?
I'll take Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Going for the mullet. Mullet power.
Mullet.
Team mullet.
Hashtag
If he
$1 million
wins-
mullet.
If he wins, I'll grow a mullet with him.
All right, hold on, I got to mark that down.
Write that down.
Growing
Lock it up.
mullet with Stenhouse. All right.
Lock it all in.
All right. Well, hopefully we are opening up next week's show talking about how Taylor's new hairstyle is coming in. But also this Saturday, it's the second leg of the Triple Crown, just minus the horse that would be going for the Triple Crown. Preakness Stakes will not feature any of the horses that finished in the top 3 of the Kentucky Derby, nor the horse that actually crossed the finish line first. So, with that now seemingly wide open, who are you picking for Saturday, Taylor?
So the stat I keep coming back to is that since 1983, just 4 horses that have won the Preakness did not run in the Kentucky Derby. So this week we have 4 of the 13 horses in the field that did run in the Derby. They are Improbable, War of Will, Win, 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 and Boat Express. Improbable is currently a plus 190 favorite. War of Will is at plus 330. I liked Improbable at the run-up to the Derby. He finished 4th after the DQ. The betting public is kind of with me on that. His odds have gotten less favorable from a profit perspective over the last few days. Smaller field, shorter track tends to favor the favorites, so I'll just pick the favorite, and that's Improbable.
Yeah, wasn't he about 4-1 odds a couple days ago? Improbable.
Yeah.
I'm going with Improbable also. I believe out of all the horses that are still standing, basically from the Kentucky Derby, I think he's the strongest one. Like Taylor said, the run up to the Derby, he was racing well. He was one of the favorites. He finished in the top 2 in most of his races. The Derby, I think they said was the first time he didn't finish in the top 2 in quite a while. I think he's going to win this. I don't think there's a lot of competition. I'm rooting for another DQ, though. I hope he wins by DQ is what I'm hoping for.
That should be a prop bet somewhere. Just the odds on will the winner of the Preakness be disqualified?
Yes.
I mean, it'd have to be like, minus 10,000 to know, considering it had never happened in the Kentucky Derby. But yeah, I'm just gonna make it unanimous and probable. The stats don't usually lie when it comes to that. When you're looking back 30 years or so, you've got to really run in the Derby to have a shot at the Preakness. And it's he finished 4th after the DQ, which means that he is the best finishing horse from the Kentucky Derby that's actually running, including the 5 that finished in front of him, if you count the horse that was disqualified. So it's the obvious pick, but sometimes the obvious pick is the right pick. And that was the case in the Derby until the disqualification. So hopefully if you bet on the obvious pick for the Kentucky Derby, you managed to cash in your winnings before that was overturned into losings. Just a thought.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I don't know what would have happened. I can't imagine some of the online sites too with that just having to, if they'd issued a payout to have to pull back. I mean, I don't know if they would have been.
That just seems like a nightmare for everybody.
Oh, everybody. At the track, if you were sitting, if you didn't have a good seat and you were at the track, so you stayed at the betting window, race finishes, cash in your ticket. How many people threw down their tickets that were actually winning tickets?
Yeah.
On the winner to win, but he finished in second. So, I mean, it's always the thing, you tear up the ticket and you walk away. I mean, how many of those were just swept up, by the
Taping together. Yeah.
Seriously, everybody's just going back. It's like a sitcom when someone accidentally tears up a winning lottery ticket and trying to piece it back together or something like that.
Yeah. Hopefully that happened. Hopefully there's a really rich janitor out there somewhere.
Agreed. That would make it all worth it for someone like that to have just been like, I found a discarded ticket that won, and now it was like a $10 wager, so it would have paid off. What were the odds on the horse that ended up winning? So it would have been like
super long, like 50 to 1 or something like that.
So maybe that was the case. It would be interesting to find. We have no Where's Your Money going this week. We're going to get right into Spread and Butter, which is a closer look at some of the weekend's biggest games and the betting spread. As usual, we're going to the NBA for this quick edition of Spread and Butter this week. Since we record the podcast Thursday mornings, posted after the Thursday night game would have already at least started or wrapped up. That leaves us only with Friday's game to talk about. Toronto visiting Milwaukee Friday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Spread sits at 6.5 and -110 on both sides earlier, but it is now, as of a few minutes ago, an even 7 points in favor of the Bucks. -105 if you bet on Milwaukee, -115 if you take Toronto +7. Which side of that spread are you taking, Rick?
Like we briefly discussed before we went on air, I'm going with Toronto here. I thought they should have won game one, and then they just went cold down the stretch. I thought I read a stat that other than Lowry, everybody else went 0 for 15 down the stretch. That's going cold. And I don't see that happening again. I think they have a good enough team to match Milwaukee offensively and defensively. I think if they shoot better down the stretch, they have an actual shot at winning the game. They looked good in game one until the end. They played tough. They were leading most of the game, or at least more times than they were behind. And I like Leonard. I think he's one of the best players in the league. I've been a fan of his since he was with the Spurs. And I'm taking the points. I'm not sure if they're going to win. I think they have a shot, but with the points, 7 points, oh, yeah, I like that one. That's actually pretty good. I don't think Milwaukee's going to win by 8 or more again.
Yeah, game one was just weird. I think Toronto just kind of ran out of gas down the stretch. Milwaukee had 6 days off. The Raptors only had 2 days off. Toronto was in control the whole game. Kyle Lowry showed up for the first time in his entire playoff career. But the weird thing about it was that Brook Lopez was the one that killed the Raptors, 29 points. He shot 12 for 21. I can't believe Brook Lopez led a team in shot attempts in 2019, but it actually worked for a number 1 seed. I think Toronto is going to have to make an adjustment. I think Serge Ibaka might have to start over Marc Gasol. I think his mobility comes in handy with Lopez just floating around the perimeter. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more Ibaka in game 2. I just like the Raptors too. 7 points is a pretty big spread. These have been the 2 best teams in the East all year long. They're fairly evenly matched. And when teams are that evenly matched, especially with Toronto up against the wall a little bit, I generally like the underdog. So I'll take Toronto again. It burned me on a Wednesday night, but 7 points, I'll take Toronto on the road.
See, I had taken Milwaukee for game one on the spread. Took until 3 minutes left in the game, but it ended up paying off. As I was saying a little bit earlier, I think that it was the middle of the game that was just from Toronto's basically, well, it wouldn't be a hangover from beating Philadelphia, but just that second win, that energy boost that you get from winning a game 7, especially in the dramatic fashion they did. I think that in game 2, it goes the other way. I don't know that they are – if they're going to get energy from that, it's got to be that of the bounce back variety. And they lost big in Philadelphia on game 6, and it's not like they crushed them in game 7. There wasn't that we got beat on the road, let's fix this, let's do this, we got this. They won on a walk-off bucket. That's the most recent example of Toronto coming off of a loss. And they won, and it was by 2 points, which would suggest that the spread would go Toronto's way, but that wasn't a loss to Milwaukee, and that was also a game that they played in Toronto. So I'm sticking with taking Milwaukee's side on this. I think that what's the difference that's going to happen in this game is I don't think Milwaukee will trail by 13. I think that was a carryover from the energy of winning game 7. I don't think it was that the fourth quarter was finally losing their momentum because they were tired, or Milwaukee, you can go both ways with rest. You can either be rested and energized and come out strong, but that's not what Milwaukee did. If anything, Milwaukee may have come out a little bit of that rust to shake off from having so many days off, whereas Toronto then lost their energy once the fourth quarter started and I don't think they regain that momentum until Game 3. At this point, not knowing what the spread will be set at, I would be willing to take Toronto on the spread for Game 3 in Toronto, as long as it's 0 points or favors Milwaukee. But because I do think that that's a game that Toronto has a very good chance of winning. But I'm taking Milwaukee in this case. I don't know that it may not be a push, but I would think that if coming off of the high that they were on coming out of that Game 7 against Philly, if Milwaukee can come back from down 13 to beat them, I don't think they trail by 13 the second time, and I think that the outcome could at least be the same. That's where I sit.
Yeah, it's pretty good logic. I mean, the teams, like I was saying, are pretty evenly matched in general. Milwaukee with a pretty big home court advantage. Toronto's been really good on the road all year, and I just can't really get past the Kawhi factor. I feel like he's going to have some kind of signature game at some point, and it may as well be on the road in Game 2. So it's a toss-up. I like Toronto in the points, but Milwaukee's pretty hard to argue against.
We shall see. Always fun. It's Give Me Props, where we look at a handful of prop bets to go over this week. We begin with movies. Lots of big movies coming out this summer, so which one will have the biggest opening weekend? Based on the odds posted at BetOnline, The Lion King is the favorite at -125. Following that, Spider-Man Far From Home at +400, Toy Story 4 at +500, and Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw at +800. 5 other options are available in the +1,200 to +2,000 range as well. Taylor, which movie will have the highest grossing opening weekend, that is worldwide highest grossing opening weekend of that list? And because we know what Rick's going to go with.
I just don't see how it's anything other than Lion King. Maybe I'm biased because of when I grew up. I was a kid when the first one came out. I probably saw it like 10 times in the theater. I feel like our work should just take the amount of a ticket price out of our paycheck that month, because they all know we're going to see it. I would say Lion King -125. Spider-Man, there has to be some kind of superhero fatigue, right? Like, do we really need another Spider-Man? I feel like one comes out every other year, and they change Spider-Man every other year. Tobey Maguire remains the best Spider-Man of all, by the way, which is a terrible take, I know.
Woo!
But I actually haven't seen any of the other ones, so that's all I got. Toy Story 4 is interesting, though, at +500, just because it's another Disney movie. Disney movies just rake in the cash. So if you're going to take a long shot, I'd probably go with that. We have Rocket Man at +1,200. I don't know if that's about Elton John or about Kim Jong-un, but that's interesting at +1,200.
Elton John reference. I love it. All right, so follow me down this yellow brick road. We got to go with Spider-Man for several reasons. First of all, Lion King, yes, that's a good pick. I'll give you that, because it was a hugely popular movie. Generations were raised on it. But here's the problem. Theaters would get so packed now. Who wants to take a bunch of screaming kids to sit with another bunch of screaming kids when it's just packed? Like, parents, you guys aren't parents. You don't understand, okay? But it's enough to drive a man crazy. So setting that aside, I also like Hobbs and Shaw, and the reason is that franchise has been insanely popular, and it's had mega box office opening weekends, and The Rock and Jason Statham, and then one of my favorite actors, Idris Elba. You got Roman Reigns in there also. We got to give him a shout out. But I think that one offers great betting value. Don't sleep on that. I know Taylor's going with Lion King, but it has to be Spider-Man, and here's why. Endgame has been extremely popular, okay? And spoiler alert here. So if you got to plug your ears, plug your ears. If you got to fast forward through the video, fast forward for about a minute, because here's why. Everybody's going to want to see what happens, how the whole universe is going to respond to Tony Stark dying, to having a new Captain America, to having no Black Widow. And the first movie to come out after that is Spider-Man. And the whole premise of the beginning of Spider-Man is someone stepping up to replace Iron Man, a.k.a. Tony Stark. comic book fanatics are going to come out in droves for this. They're going to be there. It's going to be huge. It's going to be a huge weekend. I think it's going to nip The Lion King right in the butt, and it's going to surpass them. And got to go Spider-Man.
I agree with Rick. It's the Avengers movie, by the time it is out of theaters, might surpass Avatar as the highest grossing film of all time. And there is going to be a little bit of a boost to the very next Marvel movie that comes out. It's kind of like, whatever show Game of Thrones leads into on Sunday nights, which I think is John Oliver, is going to get a viewership boost because people are just going to not change the channel immediately, except, that's a lot of on-demand streaming. But anyway, so it's got to be Spider-Man in this situation. And Rick brings up a good point because, I love The Lion King too, because I was young when that movie came out. I was a kid. It's like my dad's favorite, like legitimately his favorite movie of all time. I very much enjoy it, and I do intend to see it. But just like when I saw Toy Story 3 in theaters, and just like when I'll see Toy Story 4, there is no way I'm going when I know the theater is going to be 80 kids. I'm going to go when it's a school night at 8 o'clock or something to that extent, or like a couple of weeks after it's come out.
Yes.
It's not like I have to avoid
Preach it, brother. Preach it.
Right. It's not like I have to avoid spoilers for The Lion King. I know what happens. You can fast forward 15 seconds if you don't. Mufasa dies. It was Scar. Simba takes the blame, runs away, comes back, fights Scar, probably wins. So
that'd be a pretty big twist if he didn't win at the end, though.
That would be amazing. If I find out, the way I will see The Lion King opening weekend in theaters is if I find out that Scar ends up winning in the end and it sets up The Lion King 2 Scar's Revenge or something, like, then I am, okay, I'll be there Sunday. I will be there like Sunday evening, and I will count towards that ticket. But otherwise, the thing that counts against The Lion King and Toy Story 4 is that the adult fans, or at least most of us, who want to see the movie because we have fond memories of the movie or of the series, in Toy Story's case, don't want to go when it is going to be all of the kids who drag their parents along opening weekend. Spider-Man doesn't run into that issue because the movie theaters for those films, while the kids are going to go, but they're packed opening weekend with the adult fan base, which it can be similarly at times, can also be maybe an irritant if you're not part of that mega fan base. But it's far more likely that I would go see Spider-Man opening weekend than it is that I would go see The Lion King opening weekend. It's been a long time since I've seen any movie on opening weekend, so I may not count towards any of those tickets. But that's why I'd have to go with Spider-Man. It's going to sell out because it's going to be the adults that go, and the adults are going to avoid seeing The Lion King and Toy Story 4 opening weekend if they don't have to go with their kids. If they can hold out until the theater's a little less packed and a little fewer kids in that theater, that's when they'll go. So that's what the Fast and the Furious movie is an interesting option because it's The Rock. But I still don't see that coming close to a Spider-Man, or, it'll probably be Spider-Man, Lion King, Toy Story 4. Oh, Toy Story 3 went nuts at the box office. So Toy Story 4 could be one of those sleepers on there. But again, won't surpass Spider-Man. That's just the way it's going to go. It's a Marvel movie. It's the first after Avengers, the most recent Avengers. It's just got to be. Let's move over to TV. Speaking of, Game of Thrones airs its series finale Sunday night. Taylor and I have been doing a betting on the Iron Throne series leading up to every episode this season. Find those in the Odds on Favorites YouTube channel. Taylor, will go with you here first. Number of prop bets available for the series finale. Which one interests you the most?
So there are a couple I like. One of them is who will be the first character to die in the finale. We have Daenerys as a heavy -1,000 favorite. Grey Worm +300, Arya +600, Drogon +800, and a few more on down the list. Daenerys at -10,000 feels like the ultimate trap. Like, I think she'll probably die, but it'd be really weird if she was the first character to die, since that's kind of the main conflict left in the show. If they kill her off right away, I don't know what they're going to do for the rest of the 80 minutes we have to watch it. So I don't think that's a good bet. I think Grey Worm at +300 and Drogon at +800 are the best bets. The two other dragons have already died. Daenerys is riding Drogon around King's Landing right now. To get to Daenerys, you need to get through the dragon. So I just feel like the dragon is a more logical bet to die first, and you're getting it at plus 800. Grey Worm, another one, basically a soldier, one of the few people still loyal to Daenerys, plus 300. I feel like he's definitely going to die. He might as well be the first to die. So plus 300 there is pretty good value as well.
Is that the only prop bet you liked? I thought you said you had a couple.
The other one is who will rule Westeros. We saw a huge line movement on this. Bran went from like a plus 400 non-favorite to a minus 550 favorite. I don't know if the odds makers have gotten some kind of tip or what, but that's pretty massive. And it's weird because we didn't really see Bran in the last episode at all. I'm not sure. I don't think we did. He just kind of rolls around Winterfell and doesn't do anything. He doesn't really identify as Bran in the first place anymore. But the odds are so favorable that I have a hard time really betting against it. Like, I think Daenerys is a trap bet to die first, but I think Bran to rule, like, there's just so much shifting in his favor that it's a scary bet to bet against. So my favorites who will die first. The second would be who will rule Westeros, and I guess I would just side with Bran there.
Yeah, that's pretty shady seeing that kind of movement. That's like reminiscent of the older days when you used to play some bets on the WWE, and right before the show, a wrestler went from like plus 1,000 to minus 1,000. So that's shady. Yeah, I'm still sticking with Jon Snow to rule it all, and he's going to keep that dragon also. It has to be Daenerys. She has to be the first one to die. Did you see what she just did? Oh my God, it was the heel turn of all heel turns. One of my best friends told me that was the second greatest heel turn to Hulk Hogan joining the NWO. Okay? She went nuts. She lit the whole place up. She killed just about everybody. Her and her dragon. She went insane. She got revenge, rained fire, all that stuff. How is she not the first one to die? She has to be the first one to die. In my opinion, she has to be the first one to die. Keep the dragon. Jon Snow needs a dragon. He's going to rule Westeros. But my favorite bet was the one, will we see nudity or not in Game of Thrones' final episode?
Of course.
For those who have watched this entire series, just about every single episode has had nudity in it. Just about every major HBO TV show has had nudity in almost every episode. That's just the way it is these days, boys and girls. With that said, I'm going with yes. You have to go out just with everything hanging out. Let it all out, okay? In more ways than one, let it all out. There's going to be nudity. There's going to be death. There's going to be dragons. There's going to be craziness. There's going to be backstabbing, front stabbing. There's going to be everything. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Maybe a few tears. It's a show that I've loved to hate, and I can't wait. I'm pretty pumped for it.
I mean, those are both interesting. I like Taylor's point, though, about the Daenerys has the dragon, is flying around on the dragon, so it makes sense to get to Daenerys, you have to kill the dragon first. So if you think that Daenerys is going to be the first one shown and the first one attacked and attempt on her life, then the dragon would seem to be, you know, to bring her down to earth and lead to a battle or something. That would seem like the way to kickstart it. But it would be interesting to see the dragon just get stolen. Face turn for the dragon to start. That's
Jon Snow's a Targaryen. I guess he can steal the dragon theoretically.
Take the dragon. You know, she's not on it 24/7. They can find a way to get at her. Arya's going to get her just like she got the king of the dead.
It'll be interesting. Let's stick with entertainment and go over to sports entertainment. WWE Money in the Bank coming up Sunday night in Hartford, Connecticut. Oh, yeah. Rick and I will be breaking down the card and all of the matches on our new series, The Payoff, which you can find on the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel. Right now, we want to take a look at one specific prop bet for Sunday's card. There will be 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches held Sunday, where the winner gets a briefcase containing a contract that can be cashed in for a championship match at any time the person holding the briefcase desires, up to a year later. Of the 2 briefcases that will be won on Sunday, there's one for the men, one for the women. How many will be cashed in on Sunday? 0 is sitting at plus 100. 1 is currently the favorite at minus 140. and 2 is a long shot at plus 400. Rick, go for it.
You know, I guess I'm going to just have to give it away. So in my breakdown of the whole pay-per-view, if you want to call them a pay-per-view anymore, big network event, I did the math, okay? We did some math. I know some people don't like math here, so I'll keep it simple because we're only dealing with 0, 1, and 2. There has never been a time where both briefcases were cashed in at the same time, especially at the same pay-per-view where they were available to win in the first place. There's only been 3 times where someone has won the briefcase and cashed it in on the same day. That was Kane in 2010, Dean Ambrose in 2016, and Alexa Bliss last year in 2018. Kane did it in like 45 minutes. He didn't even wait. Dean Ambrose did it in almost an hour, and Alexa Bliss waited almost 3 hours before she did it. And all 3 of them cashed in successfully and won the world championship for their respective genders and shows, okay? That means the other 18 of them cash-ins, nobody cashed in on the same day. Nobody. So not only is the math pointed to 0, but you get those kind of betting odds with 0, you have to go with that. You get a great return. It's great value. All the math lines up for it. And just because I said it, I guarantee Vince is going to watch this video and he's going to say, listen, I don't want that punk to be right. We're going with 2.
Drew, you're the Vegas-based WWE correspondent. I'll just kick it right to you.
Sure. So, yeah, Rick, the point about 2, even going beyond the math, if you just want to go from a storyline perspective, Money in the Bank is the presence of at least one of those briefcases is so compelling for so long. And it's easy for WWE to maintain an audience and intrigue between January and WrestleMania, the first weekend of April, because you've got the Royal Rumble, you got the build to the Rumble, you've got like clear arc of beginning, middle, end of the road to WrestleMania. SummerSlam is a nice moment. Survivor Series is not as big as it was. Having a briefcase around towards the end of the year helps with those thinner times where people are between SummerSlam, biggest party of the summer, and Royal Rumble kicking off the road to WrestleMania. So there's no way that 2. There's no way that they would be able to do that. It would, to get rid of the storyline, like it is so good for storyline building that there's no way they would just rush them out that quick. Like the only time I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, was Dean Ambrose here when they started when they introduced the Universal title shortly after? Because he brought that belt to SmackDown, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No, that's when they had the WWE and the World Heavyweight.
Right, but it was the remerger, and then the brand split started shortly after Money in the Bank, wasn't it? Because he cashed in one, and there was a triple threat match to determine at the next pay-per-view which brand would maintain it. Ambrose went to SmackDown, Reigns and Rollins, because the whole Shield held the belt in the same night. And then they introduced the Universal title, so they split it really quick. There was a reason that they cashed in, if I'm right, and I think I am remembering it right, there was a reason that they cashed in so immediately. Alexa Bliss cashing in was to prevent Ronda Rousey from having to take a true loss, but they didn't want to put the belt on her immediately. They wanted her to go over at SummerSlam or closer to SummerSlam for her big moment. Storyline-wise, we're not in a position where that truly makes sense, because the only way that would make sense is if they're trying to merge belts, which would then mean that the only way that they would do that is if Finn Balor ends up winning, because he's the Intercontinental Champion. He's in the men's match, but even then he's not cashing in on the U.S. Championship. So there is no way that makes sense. As far as 0 or 1 goes, you got to take 0. The only way that it's 1 is Becky Lynch has 2 matches already defending both, Becky 2 belts, putting up both championships. So it is possible that Becky 2 belts would then be threatened with a 3rd, but I feel that is too obvious to happen. I feel like what you could see is the women's winner faking a cash-in or thinking a cash-in on the 2nd match and basically maybe ending that match in DQ, maybe taking out Becky, and then before they can cash in, getting taken out by her opponent. I'm assuming the Charlotte match would go on 2nd of the 2. I don't know. We won't know until Sunday. But if that were to be the case, that you got Charlotte versus Becky, the one-on-one match, and whoever it is that wins the women's could rush down in the middle of it or late in it and smack Becky over the head with the briefcase, try to cash in only to get taken out by Charlotte, that would make sense where it would be an attempted cash in, but it wouldn't actually be a cash in. And I think that is the most likely outcome. I don't think it's likely you see the men's Money in the Bank cashed in. So I would go 0. You can get plus 100 odds. I'm going with 0 on it. And I agree with Rick. The idea of 2 is being cashed in. To do away with those storylines for a full year, to have 0 Money in the Bank briefcases for a full year, there's no way they do that. Let's go to easy money. Everyone loves some easy money. So, Taylor, what is your easy money lock of the week? Are you going to the Money in the Bank pay-per-view for this?
Surprisingly not. I know everyone thought I was. I took a sharp turn to the left here.
Sort of.
Isn't really
NASCAR left turns?
Never NASCAR.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and the mullet is a lock.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes in a week. We'll see how my hair's doing. So BetOnline has a prop on whether Anthony Davis will start next season as a Pelican. No is the favorite at minus 200. Yes is at plus 150. The Pelicans obviously won the lottery. People think, oh, well, they're going to get Zion. Maybe Anthony Davis doesn't want to leave anymore. But that night we saw Shams report that he does indeed still want to leave. I can't imagine the Pelicans go through that charade again that they endured last year, where they would occasionally bench him or just sit him for second halves, things like that. It was a nightmare from a PR perspective. It just made no sense at all. I think they should just wash their hands of the situation entirely. I can't imagine him playing another game for the Pelicans, so this won't pay off until October, but no at minus 200 on Davis staying with the Pelicans seems like a pretty easy bet.
Rick, what's your easy money pick this week?
We're going back to the Money in the Bank, okay? And we're going back to Becky Two Belts and what we believe will be the first of 2 matches, her versus Lacey Evans. I like Lacey Evans. First of all, she's got a great personal story behind her outside of the wrestling ring. And then inside the wrestling ring, she's got the look. She's developed the in-ring skills. She was great down in NXT. She's distinguished herself from the rest of the roster in terms of her look and her whole vibe, the whole feel of her character. With that said, there's no way she's beating Becky Lynch. She's not winning the title. Absolutely not possible. There's no way Becky Lynch wins the most historic Wrestling Mania match of all time, a triple threat match where she wins 2 belts. First time women are ever in the main event of WrestleMania. She spent 6 months just getting to that main event, it seems like. Every chance along the way, they removed her just to mess with the fans. So they get her there. Are you telling me the next event they're going to take a belt off her? There's no way that's happening. Not at all. It's not happening. Lock, easy money, whatever you want to call it, Becky Lynch to beat Lacey Evans at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view on Sunday. Lock it up.
There will be. I mean, yeah, she went from the pre-show at WrestleMania a year ago, I believe, to the main event, first women's main event in WrestleMania history. It's and the storyline she went on, I could definitely see that continuing as Becky Two Belts. They also just got shirts for Becky Two Belts. That hasn't stopped them in the past. There was a Chris Jericho, AJ Styles had a tag team. They had a Y2 AJ shirts printed up, and they lasted a week. But yeah, I like that. Opposite of that, it is clear as mud. The game, fight, or event that seems so unpredictable, we're keeping clear away from any betting on it. Taylor is probably going to continue his streak. Just as a guess, that would be my easy money lock of the week, is that Taylor continues his streak of what his clear as mud pick is. But Rick, we're starting with you.
Right back to the Money in the Bank. And we're going to both ladder matches, and here's why. We got some – okay, without recapping my entire article, because you got to go to the website and check it out. But these are unpredictable matches, and here's why. You got 8 competitors in each match. You got a clear-cut betting favorite, and then you got multiple other wrestlers in there who have a decent shot at winning. When you examine their storylines, when you look at the news, when you look at the rumors, there's at least 2 in each match that could win this match. So at least 2 women can win the women's match, and at least 2 men can win the men's match. With that said, you have to stay away from it. Unless you want to bet on all 4 competitors, and who knows if you would even make money at the end of all of that, stay with those matches. Because, in the end, WWE can just decide to say, hey, you know what? We know what the general consensus is. We know what the fans are saying. Screw them all. We're going to pick the worst person possible to win it. We're going to have Carmella win the women's match for the 3rd time. Yeah. So stay away from those matches. I am.
Before we get to Taylor, I have to point out, I like calling that the 3rd time for Carmella, because it was the 2 for the same briefcase, right? Because it was the one that James Ellsworth won, the inaugural Women's Money in the Bank, that a dude climbed the ladder and retrieved the briefcase. And then the do-over, where they let her actually climb and win. So I just like that. I had to point out that for anybody who wasn't fully clear as to Carmella already being a repeat champion. Taylor, what is your clear as mud? And just tell us about which hockey game it's going to apply to.
Well, the Bruins seem to be home free by now. Anything can happen. They're up 3-0 in the series. They'll probably end it in 4 or 5 games. Sharks Blues, far more unpredictable. The Sharks won in controversial fashion in Game 3. The Blues were complaining about a hand pass that should have been called probably, but I'm for the Sharks anyway, I guess, so I don't mind the Blues suffering a little bit. Sharks are at -225 to win the series. The Blues are at +185. It's been unpredictable enough. The entire playoffs to this point has been unpredictable enough to where I'm not convinced the Sharks should be -225 favorites to advance at this point, even with a 2-1 lead. So once again, I just think betting on a series price like that is a bit risky. The Blues at +185 is tempting, but just washing your hands of NHL playoff betting as a whole is probably a good rule of thumb.
So that definitely was a hand pass, by the way. It was a situation where it was very clearly swatted, batted with the hand, which you're allowed to do in the defensive zone. You're not allowed to do anywhere else. It's not a penalty. It's just that you're not the play is whistled dead. Face-off would go out of the zone. So instead of that, 2-1 series lead. So how about that?
It again.
San Jose Sharks picking up.
It again.
Hey, you know what though? The truth is that without they're doing what they've got to do to be in those games. You can't benefit from a referee's mistake if you're not in a position to win anyway.
You ain't cheating. You ain't trying.
Well, I don't think it's so much cheating as it is just that they happen to get some beneficial calls, but they capitalized. They still had to score the goal. It was just on the hand pass, quick pass goal. So it wasn't like the hand pass went into the net or anything like that. So
that'd be wild.
It would be. We have seen a puck go off of be head-butted in. That was called back.
Hey,
in the
Brett Hull's skate was in the crease. That goal should not have counted. Don't get me started.
If I remember the ruling going back 20 years.
They changed the rule after that.
Immediately, but they had ruled that basically he had established out of the crease, in the crease, out of the crease, or something to that extent. It was literally 20 years ago. I mean, this is
garbage. It cheated my Sabres.
To anyone watching from Buffalo, which I know that we have a lot of Buffalo fans who are part of our company, but sorry, because I know that the Sabres haven't
cheated.
But yeah, it's
robbed.
Yes, Brett Hull's skate was in the crease.
Thank you.
A headbutted goal was probably more skilled than an empty netter probably should have counted. But anyway,
that should count.
That is. Yeah. We are going to be talking hockey though in just a second. Well, it is that time of the podcast where headphone users are most likely to get mad at me. That is because it is time for Show Me the Money! Lines, where we look ahead to this weekend's games and events and their current money lines. Let's talk and start with the NHL, which we were just talking about. St. Louis Blues managed to earn a split in San Jose with the Sharks, but the Sharks won in controversial fashion in overtime of Game 3 on Wednesday. Game 4 coming up Friday night, with St. Louis favored at -140 to win the game. San Jose, the underdogs, at plus 120. Taylor, who are you taking for this game? And no, you can't just say it's clear as mud.
I actually feel pretty confident in St. Louis. They lost their first home game in Game 3, controversial overtime game. That's pretty much a must-win. 3-1 isn't a death sentence like it is in the NBA or baseball, but obviously you still don't want to go down 3-1 going back to San Jose in Game 5. So St. Louis, these teams are pretty evenly matched. I would not be surprised if this thing went 7, so St. Louis evens things up. I'll take them at minus 140.
I agree. I've been with the Blues for a couple rounds now, and I've also been against the Sharks for a couple rounds now, and I see no reason to switch that. Blues should have won Game 3. They were robbed. They'll win Game 4. Series will go back to San Jose, and then it's basically the best of 3.
Yeah, I'm going to just make it unanimous. I got St. Louis evening it up, and yeah, best 3. It is one of those things where San Jose manages to win this, it's over in 5. Because you can't lose 2 straight at home, the first of which being in controversial fashion. This game will tell what St. Louis's future holds. Maybe even just the first period might tell, because it's, if they come out and they're angry and they get going and they work, they'll hang and it'll be a 6 or 7 game series. If they come out dejected, which I don't think they will, then the series is over in 5. So yeah, I got St. Louis to win. That's I think it make it a 2-2 series. And then we're back to square one, best of 3. Let's move on to the UFC, where Saturday's show is in Rochester, New York, and it features a really intriguing match at the top of the card. In the welterweight division, it'll be RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, taking on Kevin Lee. We saw some shifting in betting lines between Wednesday and Thursday. Lee was a slight betting favorite on Wednesday, but as of this recording, it's actually matching minus 115s for Lee and RDA to win. Rick, who are you taking, since it's basically the same odds on either side?
I like Kevin Lee in this fight, and he's younger. In my opinion, he's more athletic. He's got the grappling skills to counter whatever RDA throws at him, and I think he's the better striker now in their respective points of their careers. I think RDA is more on the decline. I mean, he might be able to pull out a win or two still that make you say, oh, wow, he's got something left. But for the most part, I don't see him as a contender anymore for this weight class or when they were in the lightweight weight class. I think it's Kevin Lee here. I think he's going to win this fight. I was leaning towards a unanimous decision victory for Lee. I don't know if he'll get the stoppage on RDA, before time runs out, before they go the distance. But I'm pretty confident in Kevin Lee.
So I'll just keep following your lead. Didn't go so hot last week, but Kevin Lee, it seems like it's pretty evenly matched, minus 115 apiece. I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah, well, who could have seen a pile driver coming in the UFC last week? So
exactly.
Yeah. I think Lee, for the reasons that Rick was saying, I think that he's got the more upside at this point. He's on the upswing, and
he's
would think
explosive. This is a natural weight for him. He doesn't have to cut weight. Yep. I mean, same with Dos Anjos. This is a better weight for him too, but he's on the downside of his prime, of his peak. Kevin Lee's just getting ready to hit it. This is his debut in this weight class. I think he's going to win it. He's going to look good doing it.
All right. Well, in boxing, there are 2 big cards this weekend. We've got plenty more on the UFC, MMA, and boxing events on Rick and My series This Week in Combat Sports, by the way. Make sure to check that out on the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel. But right now, we want to focus on Deontay Wilder's bout against Dominique Breazeale in a fight for Wilder's WBC Heavyweight Championship. The champion comes in at minus 855, challenger at plus 605. Rick, can the challenger take down the odds-on favorite here?
No. Wilder is a beast, okay? Especially when he's fighting against guys that aren't as skilled as him. They're both about 6'7". These are big dudes that are going to be going at it. But Wilder has knocked out 39 of his 40 wins, okay? And the other one was a decision, and there was a draw he had with Fury last year, which they'll have that rematch, and I believe Wilder will win that. The question here isn't whether or not Wilder wins. The question should be, is he going to get the KO or not? That's pretty much what it comes down to for me.
So is he going to get the KO or not?
I think he's going to get the TKO. He'll stop him. I don't know if he'll get the knockout per se, one-shot knockout, but I think he can get the TKO. I think they can wave it off. I think it'll happen after the middle round, in the middle rounds, before you get to the championship rounds, because he's just going to put a beating on this guy, and eventually he's going to just put him out.
Taylor, you want to jump in? You agree with Rick on this one?
It's hard to argue with minus 855. That's pretty stout. You'd have to be pretty bold to bet on this other guy at plus 605, Dominic Brasile, I believe is what you said. So
that's what I went with.
It is more interesting to bet on whether the guy will actually get knocked out, which is pretty embarrassing if you're him, gotta say. So
there's numerous prop bets for this fight. I covered a bunch of them in my preview. So one of them being, is he going to knock him out? And like Taylor just alluded to, that is actually has more potential for your return than betting on Wilder to win outright. So in my opinion, and I'll say the same thing in our Combat Sports one, you'll get a better return taking prop bets than you will the outright winner. But I don't want to just say, his odds actually have gone down, Wilder. He opened up as a bigger betting favorite. When I wrote my preview a couple of days ago, it was over minus 900. So they're improving a little in terms of towards the challenger. Even with that said, Wilder's going to blast him. He's going to blast him.
Well, that also might just be a case of, how many people are really going to wager $900 to try to win 100? It's got to be just to try to get some action, just to offset the just in case there's an upset, because, to get basically 6-1 payout on the challenger is a lot more intriguing to throw $5 at than trying to throw $900. You're probably throwing your money away to bet $5 trying to get 30, but you'd have to bet like $300 to get $30 back.
In the co-main event, the champ was a minus 4,000 favorite depending on the sports book, probably even higher, depending on what sports book you're looking at. So when it comes to boxing, they're not afraid to have ridiculous odds.
Yeah, well, it reminds me too of that the guy who, after Tiger Woods won, not to go back to golf, but had wagered that no, Tiger Woods will not win all 4 majors, and he was, what was the odds on? Do you remember? It was like minus 10,000, something insane.
Yeah, something between that. It's like minus 10 or minus 20,000. Like it was, you don't bet on that.
Yeah, basically he would have gotten since he had to wait now until at least this weekend to get paid. It's, probably would have been better off even with a bank account. Just get like 0.0005% interest.
That's so much time and money on their hands, clearly.
Pretty much. We are at that time of the podcast, though, for what is either my favorite segment or my least favorite segment, and that is what we're just calling Whoops. This is our chance to come clean about something we projected, predicted, or pushed that we were really wrong about, and a chance to explain ourselves. I'm going to go first to get us going here. This, for I think like the 3rd week in a row, is a conditional whoops. I picked Carolina to beat Boston. As of the recording, they're down 3-0. It has been overcome in the NHL before, but not in this round. It was, I think, like a first round 3-0 that was overcome. But basically, I jumped on the bunch of jerks bandwagon a little too late, and it was one of those things with Boston. Just they're a very good team. They have they have a very unique player, obviously, in Brad Marchand, because he is both maybe their most skilled player and the best at taking opponents off their game. It is a really, really unique combination. He's your favorite player if you're a Bruins fan, and he's the player you hate more than anybody else in the league if you like any of the other 30 teams. Or even if you're a Seattle fan and you're waiting 2 more years, you still hate Brad Marchand already.
So he's the Draymond Green of the NHL is what you're saying?
He is, there's a reason he has earned the nickname the Rat. There's a handful of players in the NHL that earn that nickname over time, and he is just a pest. And you either – if you respect the game, you love to hate him. You still think that there are plenty of times the NHL should have suspended him where they haven't. But if you're a fan, if you respect the game and you just kind of respect the players who can play that kind of style, you have to almost admire him in a sense. You could still hate him, but have that little bit of admiration that he can pull that off. But, I mean, in Boston, he's beloved. But, yeah, the Boston Bruins, Tuukka Rask is finally fulfilling that potential of being one of the best goalies in the NHL, where he's doing it through the playoffs. They're the better team. I had said it, not taking it back. It's still a whoops. I had said Boston was the better team, and I was still picking Carolina. This is just finally the round where the better team is going to is going to win the series against Carolina. So it's a conditional whoops in the event that Carolina wins 4 straight. The way this postseason's gone, nothing's out the window entirely. But that is very clearly a whoops for me. So, Rick, what is your whoops of the week this week?
Well, I'll tell you, my whoops is not Carolina because I've been saying something. And I just wanted to put that out there,
Yep.
Just in case anybody was wondering. My whoops, though, has to go to the UFC and the main card. Now, I went, 5-1 on the prelims, and then I went 1-4 on the main card. Okay? And you know why? It's all Brazil's fault. Okay? Because I took the Brazilians to win. Okay? I have never taken the Brazilians to win again. Well, maybe. I can't say that. There's some good fighters. But Jose Aldo choked. I told you guys last week I was only going with Anderson Silva because the feel-good story, but I'm not confident in a 44-year-old. So that should not be held against me just because he got knocked out. I said there was a chance he'd get knocked out. The main thing, and then Thiago Alves, I didn't expect him to lose. He was the betting favorite going in, and he lost too. So, and then in the main event, so all 4 Brazilians on the main card end up losing. And Rose, my dear sweet Rose, got knocked out. She was winning that fight until she got basically put through the mat. So, whoops. I'm going to make up for it this week. I'm going to go at least 9-4, 10-3, like I usually do, okay? Come back. It's okay. We all have bad weeks. But listen to this. My bad week is still 500. Everyone else's bad week is sub 500. I just wanted to point that out.
That's true. All right, Taylor, we had you come clean at the beginning of the show. If you want to come clean again on that, or if you have anything else you want to get off your chest, go for it.
I mean, I feel like that was such a massive failure that it deserves all the attention it's getting. I picked the Rockets to blow out the Warriors in Game 6 and possibly Game 7. Backing the Rockets in these series against Golden State has not been profitable. I was in Las Vegas at the Westgate last season for Game 7. Bet on the Rockets. They were at home. Chris Paul was out, but, I was feeling pretty good about it. Obviously, they missed 27 consecutive three-pointers in the game and wound up losing. So, betting against the Warriors is probably a fool's errand in the first place, and hopefully I've learned my lesson by now, but we'll see. I'll probably pick against them in the finals, and we'll be right back here in a few weeks. So.
But we're about to close the window here, so one last chance to get some things in. The closing line is set. Looking for some final thoughts. Taylor, what are your final thoughts for this week?
I said it earlier. I whiffed on the Kentucky Derby. That's another whoops, but I think everyone missed on that. So it's not so bad. Preakness, smaller field, shorter track. Favorites fare better. Horses at the Derby that are also running the Preakness fare well. So Improbable plus 190 or War of Will plus 330. It's hard to see anyone else really winning that. So I don't hate taking either of them. I would still side with Improbable, but War of Will for slightly more profitable odds, I don't hate either. So bet on the Preakness, bounce back from your Derby loss with Improbable.
Rick, go for the closing line. Take us home strong.
You know what? For me, it has to be all about the Game of Thrones. Series finale this Sunday. 8 years, or 8 seasons, even longer than that since we had to wait like a decade in between one of these seasons. It's all about Game of Thrones, okay? We got prop bets. There's depending on which sports betting site you look at, there could be anywhere from 5 to 25 prop bets on this show. Bottom line is we need to see who's going to rule at the end, who's going to die, and last but not least, will we get to see the Mother of Dragons fun bags one more time?
I just have to mention, since we're talking TV, how excited I was to get a text from my brother yesterday morning that Rick and Morty season 4 is coming back finally in I think November of this year. It's been 2 years. So you were talking about just shows that have gone on crazy hiatuses. Hiatuses? Sure. Any of those. But yeah. Rick and Morty, I don't know if we'll see any. They're so random with everything they do. I don't know if there really could be a true betting line on that. But you mentioned the hiatus. I had to mention that because I was really, really excited about that yesterday.
Gotta shank the mother of dragons. Gotta shank her.
We will see on Sunday for that. That is going to do it for this edition of the Odds On Favorites podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel. Check out gamblingsites.org for plenty more from these guys here. They've been Taylor Smith and Rick Rockwell. I'm Drew Goldfarb. We'll see you next week.